Here we are at the trade show, the IPCPR, our annual trade event, introducing all of our new products, and you can see quite a large booth this year. We've expanded originally from cutters, then to lighters, into travel and containers, and now into humidification systems with our recent acquisition of Madeleine Humidification Systems. With that acquisitions, we've taken on expertise in how to humidify your cigars and how to humidify and season your humidor. So today I'd like to talk a little bit about propylene glycol solution and the crystal medium that we use to humidify your cigars. Let's start with your humidor. The proper way to season a humidor is not, in our opinion, by wiping the humidor with a sponge, or worse yet, by pouring water. The problem with doing those two things is that you can, at the very least, raise the fiber of the grain of the humidor, and at the worst, perhaps even warp the box itself. The way to properly season a humidor is to insert propylene glycol solution at a sufficient volume to quickly bring the humidity level inside the box up to 70%. Using propylene glycol solution, there it will remain. The reason that it will remain at 70% with propylene glycol solution is that PG expresses humidity and regulates it naturally at a constant 70%. This is as opposed to a distilled water, which doesn't seek any particular humidity. It seeks evaporation in the atmosphere at whatever rate the atmosphere is demanding, because it's very humid, like here in Las Vegas, or it's very wet, perhaps like in Miami. So, propylene glycol is actually a non-toxic chemical that is used in a small amount in distilled water solution to release the humidity of the distilled water at an average rate of 70%. Now, once you have the propylene glycol solution in your humidor, you can be confident that you'll maintain an average 70% rather than the spikes and valleys of distilled water. The problem with distilled water, therefore, is that with those spikes and valleys, you have high risk of cracking the wrappers on your cigars. You humidify them up to 80–90%, then in a week or 10 days it drops to 40–30%. What you've done is expanded and contracted that band beyond the natural capabilities of the leaf itself. All right. So once you have the PG solution in your humidor, you're at 70%. We suggest using a crystal medium, and these are plastic crystals which absorb up to 450 times their volume in the propylene glycol solution liquid. So literally, you fill 99% of the container's volume space with solution, rather than having most of the space occupied by foam or oasis type medium that is more traditional in the trade. Therefore, you can take, and if you listen here, you can hear that these are dry crystals, which you can barely see. Fill them with water or propylene glycol solution, and they'll expand to the entire volume of the container. How do you know when you're ready to refill? The crystals shrink toward the bottom of the actual container itself. Time to refill with propylene glycol, and during that entire process of the evaporation where the crystals are shrinking, you still have 70% relative humidity inside your box.
That's amazing. How long will they last before they start to dry out, so to speak?
Well, that depends entirely on two variables.
Okay.
What's the size of the box, and how big is the humidification unit inside that box? In other words, is it adequate for the size of the box? That's the first variable. And the second variable is, what's the ambient humidity in the environment around the box? Every time you open the box in Phoenix, are you exposing the interior of the box to 10–20% humidity, or in fact, are you in Miami exposing it to 90%? So, we've made it simple for the consumer. We've come out with the crystal jar I just showed you to season the humidor. That's the very first unit that you should place in your humidor to bring it up. Then we've made it simple by naming our crystal vehicles, let's call them, because these vehicles deliver the humidity through propylene glycol solution. We've named them to the humidor's the size specification for each size of crystal jar.
Sure.
So we have a crystal 50, a crystal 100, and a crystal 250. Now, what we suggest for the largest boxes is that the crystal device goes in the lid because, frankly, humidity is heavy and it will drop down.
Right.
However, in a large box where you have a layer of cigars, has a very difficult time dropping below that layer of cigars.
Yeah.
So the next trick is to put a jar at the bottom of the box, frankly in a humidor larger than this one, and that way you can create ambient humidity in the lower levels.
Okay.
So there you have it.